I was 40 years old at the time, and man, that morning was like every other morning, except it didn't give me a memo that I was going to experience this. Um, I was not ill before, I was just very busy in my mind, like I always am. And I went to take a shower, and while I was in the shower, I was always very busy. I was having a full blown conversation with God, asking Him all these questions because it was right after the pandemic, just when all flights started to go back out, and I was coming out of this very still period of asking, oh my gosh, what's my purpose? Because the pandemic gave me a lot of time to reflect. And that morning in the shower, I was going through the whole pandemic and very annoyed of what happened and what I lost and the business that was, now just trying to rebuild itself. And I took a breath. That's all I did. I took one breath and there was no breath. I couldn't catch a breath. There was no warning signs. And man, thinking about it now, it was a very scary experience because there was no warning signs. And I remember myself being in such a panicked state that I pulled the shower curtain down and I just didn't know what to do. And I think between that period, now that it's happened for this period of time, getting to the period of knowing that you may die, although it's a quick process, it felt very slow for me. Like I had a flash in my mind to think about everything that I probably did wrong or hoped to do that day. And I had a few flashbacks of memories of knowing that I had an asthma pump in my bag, and I struggled out of the shower to put my hand in the bag, and I felt the pump, and I remember there was a voice in my head, you don't know how to use it. And in that minute my phone rang at the same time, and it was so ridiculous, all these things happening and I'm not catching breath. I found out afterwards that my guide kind of synchronized these series of events to happen. I guess for me to not just have a witness, but it was showing how much they pre-planned this a month before. Because a month before I got that asthma pump and I thought it was ridiculous, but it's the first thing I thought about when I was almost dying, right? And I remember the last thing I thought on the floor, I was very annoyed with myself. I was very unhappy. I was like, they're going to come home and find you naked on the floor. I was so mad. Like, how can you die like this? It's ridiculous. And then there was just the stillness, and I lost all awareness of my physical state. I wasn't in a body anymore. And my next awareness was in this white space. And as soon as I was to think, there was no words, and I didn't feel any form. It was the first time I felt myself without, fingers and toes. And as soon as I was to think, though, my grandmother appeared in front of me, who passed away years before, and she was looking so good. And I thought I would be speaking words, but there were no words, but I still knew everything. And I had this thought, where am I? And before there was an answer, there were just light orbs populating around me. And I just like, oh my gosh, it felt as if I was home. Um, Although I didn't feel a form, it felt very warm. It was crowded, but not crowded in a way where you feel scared. It was just welcoming. It was just a feeling that I don't think I have human words to explain. It was love, but it still felt more than love. You know what I mean? And I was identifying every light orb that was populating around me. I realized these were angels. And before I had this experience, I didn't know there were so many angels, to name them. And as the light orbs began to populate, I was naming angels, going ahead. Haniel, wow, Raph. I was just naming everybody. And it kind of felt like, welcome home. You haven't been to like a reunion type of thing. And as I started to populate around me, it just felt now as if it was expanding this space where I am. And I remember on my left, I observed what I would think is an angel because she had wings, right? And I looked over there because I was seeing this beautiful rainbow of colors like just moving. And I saw silhouette figures of what I perceived as us, souls who's come to the light. And as soon as I was to think, what's happening there, I I knew immediately it was spiritual rehab. And I didn't have to think what spiritual rehab was. I was like, oh my gosh, they're sorting out their stuff, you know? And then immediately I thought to myself, so what happens to the souls who don't come to the light? And immediately I was flooded with this information. It's like something just flooded me with just a whole bunch of information, and I just knew. And I recognized that there's some souls. Well, first of all, when you exit, or we call it die, when you expand from your body, you don't expand with the emotions that you carry here in form. They don't go with you, the ego, none of that. So when you expand into form, you are hit immediately with all the decisions you made while you had this body. And there's some souls on their exit, one, some don't recognize they've passed away. They're so attached to the physical world. They are still going about with their families, integrating, wondering why nobody's hearing them. That's one. Two, they had me see that on the exit, because the spirit recognizes everything they did, some spirits choose not to go to the light, either because they are flooded with the decisions they make and they don't think that source of love which they feel immediately, they're not sure if it will welcome them. And some just choose not to. They choose to continue with their patterns. If you're an addict, if you're always at a bar, I want to continue here. You know what I mean? And that I found was very profound information. And as soon as I took my focus from that, because everything there just felt like my awareness there, my awareness somewhere else. In front of me, this was this beautiful archway. And behind it was this amazing crystal city. I wanted to go there so bad. On the left of the crystal city, I remember I saw something that looks like a waterfalls, and I love to see waterfalls. Beyond it, it looked like there were domes type of structures. And I really wanted to go there. My grandmother appeared again. I was like, oh gosh, she stopped me from going through that archway. Now I know if I had gone through that archway, I wouldn't have returned to form. So I thank her for that. But it just felt like a space that every human being deserved to go. I kid you not. That's how it felt. It was pulling me in. On to my right, my awareness now shifted to a huge figure forming to my right side. And I remember it felt as if I was looking up, and that's how I expect an angel to look. And it was this huge angel. And immediately I knew it was Archangel Raphael. And then again, it hit me like a ton of bricks with memories. I was having pre-birth memories before I was in the womb. And I was having memories in the womb, and I realized, oh my gosh, Archangel Raphael is my main angel. And he was showing me imprints of my life, of moments where he was in my life, either saving me, redirecting me, protecting me, like being in the hospital and he was there and he was just giving me these flashes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that you were following me all these stages of my life, which was kind of cool. And it felt as if months went by now that I think about the aspect of time, because I saw so much. I saw other probabilities while they were there. I was seeing probabilities of Earth gone by, other Earth times that annihilated itself because of their decisions. And I think now that they were showing me how powerful our initiation of choice is, which we don't use a lot. We think we don't have a choice. How powerful we are as creators with our thought forms when we think, and how we choose to either react or not react to things. And they were showing me the probabilities of also this planet. And some of the probabilities weren't exactly the nicest because of the choices that we were making of continuing to just conform and shrink in our own light. Then I saw this beautiful probability, and it was amazing. And it's as if they were showing me, I call it the blueprint, because they were showing me how much kindness and love, how easy it is. It comes without any cost. They were showing me people as energy. So every person that I was seeing in those clips had like this beautiful, I don't know, like heart center. So it's like everyone's lit up. And you could see people energetically who didn't see that they have that light in them. So that went on, felt like forever. And I think I was starting to feel, I don't know, energetically pulled to how people live. And he made me aware that I was going to see three aspects of my own life. So onto my right, I was directed into a room. Felt like a room. But I can describe it the best way by saying it's like a huge honeypot, because when I went in there, it was like honeypots, naturally. They were pulsating and in gold. And as soon as I was to think to myself, what are these? I got to understand that these were the life memories, the life records, that's the right word, for every human being that's ever existed. And it just kept expanding. I was like, oh my gosh, each one of those represents one person. Every thought you've ever held, everything you ever expressed, everything you've ever reacted to is there. And one came out, and I think I can say this one was for me. And the first thing I got to perceive, I guess is the right word, I was 5 years old and I had no memory of this, but I was in a red dress and my sister was she was getting me ready somehow. And she had a thought, and I recognized immediately, Marge, I wasn't feeling how I felt in the moment or in the memory. I was feeling how she felt, and I was hearing all her thoughts. And while she was getting me, attired, she had this thought in her mind. She didn't speak it. She said, I will protect you forever. And I thought to myself, protect me from what? Now, my sister is like 20 years older than me, so we've always had a tit for tat, because she's always been a mother more than a sister to me. So we've always argued. I'm always like, man, can't you be more fun? Let me go to that party. Let me do this. And she's always more like a mother, and I've always given her a hard time for not being more childlike. And I think maybe that's why they gave me this vision in my mind. And they took me to her own childhood, and they had me witness something that she experienced as a child that wasn't so nice. And that night she whispered a prayer to God, and she said, God, if you just give me a sister, I promise I'll protect her forever. And I recognized like a ton of bricks, like, oh my gosh, that's why she's so protective. And I felt a love that I've never felt in the physical state. Because I knew she loved me as a sister, but I never knew it was that much. And that really gave me all the information I needed to go forward, understanding why she is the way she is. And that kind of went away, almost like a hologram, but calling it a hologram is still a disservice because it's so high-tech technology, right? And the second, now I know it's life review, and then I had no idea what it is. So I can say the second life review I got was, I was in high school, and listen, I'm a Jamaican. My Jamaican mother um, kind of grew us very fearful, and I think that's just a culture of Caribbean parents. They fear us into not doing things, right? So I always thought to myself, man, if I kiss a boy, I'm getting pregnant. That's how silly I was. I'm not like you new generation kids. Like, I took everything that my mother said with a grain of salt, and I sucked it up, right? So this boy liked me in high school. I was in seventh grade. Yeah, seventh grade. Seventh or eighth grade. And it was Valentine's Day, and he brought roses for me. I was so embarrassed, and I was silly, and I thought to myself, if I take that flowers, I don't know, maybe in my mind I thought I was going to be married or something. It's so silly. But anyway, I refused the rose from him that day. And man, I felt the most excruciating pain because I was feeling how he felt. And it tore me up. It tore me up so much because I didn't even have a memory of that event in my life. I am now 40 years old. Don't remember any of that thing. But how he felt, the angels allowed me to feel the pain that he held in his heart. And it really tore me up. And I thought to myself, something that I wasn't even aware by just not accepting something. And they made, I think I was allowed to understand that when you are unkind to somebody, no matter what, it causes a ripple. It doesn't just stay there. Even saying one unkind word, it causes a ripple in their life and everyone that they meet and every thought form they hold from that. And energetically, it ripples, it compounds. And I think that's what I was feeling, why it was so much. And a light orb just came out of nowhere. And this light orb wasn't like the angelic one. It was filled with colors. It was changing. And I knew immediately, oh my gosh, that's his soul. And I didn't get to say anything. There was no words exchange, but it just felt like I received some kind of relief. And I kid you not, before I forget, after this experience, I tried to reach out to this guy, and then my schoolmates told me that he passed away years before. So, man, that was something that I really needed to feel as if I said sorry or something. The third life review I saw, I was in my 20s in that memory, and I was in Jamaica at a supermarket, and there was a lady in front of me, and she was, there was a line behind, and she was there for a while, and you could see her putting back like the bread, and it felt as if she was trying to decide, what can I do without, right? And I recognized she can't pay for her whole bill, and I just bent over to the teller and I said, I'll pay her bill. Just pack her up, let her go. And the teller told her, because she recognized that she was getting everything, and she turned around to me and she held my hand like this. I'll never forget. And Archangel Raphael allowed me to recognize that day. She didn't just shake your hand, she gave you grace. And I felt it. In that moment, I felt it. Then in the memory, I didn't, because I didn't know what to feel for. And they kind of took me almost back into her lifetime. The night before, they allowed me to witness her praying and say, God, I don't know how I'm going to feed these children, but I know you'll find a way. And they said, what you did. Immediately, I started to hear like boots, stamping on the floor like an army. And they said, boots on the ground. Every human being are boots on the ground for God. Every human being does become activated to do something because of somebody's prayer. And what you did that day was reaffirm her faith in prayer and in God, because she knew she asked something and somebody just spontaneously did it without her asking. And they allowed me to see 3 children next door who that kindness rippled to. It's a rippled effect. And they showed me her daughter and her son, who were at the time younger people, but they showed me how her daughter, fast forward, was also giving back to other human beings because of that story. And that also, I think, had me in a pause moment, because I was not feeling how I felt in the moment. I was feeling the ripples of how expansive that became by just doing one act of kindness. And then my honeypot went away. I was like, why? I wanted it to stay because I wanted to see more things. I will say this here. I don't think I say it at many places. I'll be honest with you, Marge. Up to that point, I've done a lot of what I thought was grandeur things on this earth. I've given a lot, helped children go into school. I've done like really big things for people. I thought those were the things that give a real big punch, right? But that life review allowed me to understand that the very minute things that we overlook, those are the things that ripples the most. Because if somebody asked me, what are you going to get thanks for when you go to heaven? I would say the biggest, grandest thing I ever did, right? No, it didn't matter. What mattered was the very small things. the whispers of prayers that we were boots on the ground for. So my attention was taken from that room, that space, and I learned so much. There was so much information. There was so much, I don't know. There was so much knowings that was just flooding in. Now I know they call it downloads. And I was asking questions, you know, what's wrong with these children? Why do people suffer? Why is there war in the world? And the more I asked, the more I felt everything energetically. And I recognize without any answers with words that we're the ones who are choosing the world we live in. And I recognize that the probabilities that they were showing me that we call predictions, they change according to our own choices. So a probability of this earth annihilating itself from war, they showed us collectively, humanity, you make a choice that we want to change. That probability dissolves itself, and here is a new probability for the earth. We all, individually and collectively, we are the ones who are the architects of this world we live in. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my gosh, if it's so easy, why does it feel so hard, right? And I recognize because we have to stop fighting the war in our own minds. Because we continue to believe that we are so separate from each other. And by holding that one thought, that becomes our own war internally. And we express it externally. And as within, so without. And I was just seeing, it's just the most amazing things. I don't talk about them a lot because religion has so much conformity, even with Jesus. So I've chosen many times not to talk about Jesus a lot, but the blueprint that Jesus left, and it's so amazing, was not just for people, don't follow me in hierarchy, but he showed us how not to be distracted. I don't speak about it a lot. People don't like you talking about something they hold on to so much. But I don't know why I'm pressed to say it now. Jesus walked this planet to show us that we're all here on an assignment. Like you. You've gone through your life and something is pulling on your heart and you let go of what everyone's perspective is and you chose, I want to be a lighthouse, which is what you're doing. And we all have different assignments, but the main blueprint that Jesus showed us is that while you are into your assignment, please be reminded nothing here is permanent. And as you continue your assignment, let me show you how not to be distracted from your light, which is what Jesus did. And we all miss it because we all think, I just need to call the name and live however I want to live and judge other people and still believe I'll be saved. No. The blueprint Jesus left is not to judge anyone, but to love everyone as yourself. And the aspect of being still is to find that stillness within you, not to act out in the loudness and the emotions of your mind, but to know that your body is always guiding you. Jesus never used experiences outside of him to be reactive. He always found a mountain somewhere away from everybody to be still and silent and to reflect. If I react to this, will it allow the light of God to expand or will it shrink it? And every time, without apology, he ensured that he was not distracted from his light. And that's the blueprint. And many people won't like it because we want things to be hard, but it's really that simple. So what felt like maybe years of being on the other side, my attention went back to this archway with this crystal city. And I remember I really wanted to go there. My grandmother appeared again and she said, it's time to go. And I remember there was this thought to go where? Because I completely forgot about family, about bills. I forgot about the pandemic. I did not have any memories of any of that. Because for some reason, I knew everyone would be okay, whether I was there or not. And as soon as I know I would argue with her, I was outside of this white space, and now I'm in this darkness. And I can't call it a dark room because this felt like the womb. Everything that I was thinking there, I could feel it being curated. And I think they gave me this experience of understanding, I guess, what we call the art of manifestation. It begins here in our thoughts, our intentions first. So my intention was to hold on to this purity that I was feeling. And because of that, my thoughts were clear. They weren't convoluted. And everything that I was thinking, I could almost see the weaving of the golden thread. It was like, this is where you create the world you want to live in, which means that we hold this superpower and we didn't know. And it seemed as if somebody poked the darkest darkness with a pin, and there's a very small light that started to expand. And the more I focused on it, I started to feel this physical state again. I was very disappointed leaving this body, and I was very disappointed coming back to it. I was like, I didn't want to move. And the more the light expanded, I'll never forget when I took that first breath. I remember hearing, that's not just air. That is consciousness you breathe. And I recognized for the first time, oh my gosh, I've always had God flowing through me. I've always had light force moving through my being. And by that time, I was aware of fingers and toes and everything, but I wouldn't move. And the phone that I answered before was my hubby in Jamaica, who told me after that I just had this urgency called Nick Now. So he called me the moment before I passed out or passed away. So he was on the phone screaming because I didn't get to speak to him before I went out. And he had called my brother-in-law, who was coming through the door by that time. And they're both in a panic state. And the first thing that hit me was fear. I felt their fear. And man, fear is so energetically discombobulated. It was driving me absolutely crazy. And I was trying to say, I'm okay. And I remember my brother-in-law was like, okay, let's get dressed. You have to go to the hospital. I was like, I'm okay. And he said, no, you're not. And I said, no, you have no idea. Everything is okay. And I could feel his fear. And I was like, why are you so afraid? And he said, no, I'm not. And I felt a little bit confused because he was saying he wasn't, but I felt something else from him. I felt excruciating fear. And I guess for the first time, I was really feeling energies of everyone, which I came back with. And on that ride to the hospital, I know I didn't need a hospital because I felt okay. And I rolled the windows down, and the air really didn't feel like the air anymore. I felt it going through me. The sun, as it hit my skin, I could see it flowing through me. I don't know, it felt as if I knew every tree that I was passing. It's the first time I've ever been so aware. And when I went to the hospital, I was there telling the nurse, I'm okay. And I felt her fear too. And also I felt a little bit, I don't know what the emotion was, but she thought I was a little bit crazy, so I don't know what to call that, because I was telling her I just saw angels, the world, I have the blueprint for the world. And as I would observe people, I would see these shadows around them, and I recognized, oh my gosh, it's a doubt that they're carrying, or that's a fear of death that they're carrying. I could see the shadows of those, and I could also see people with the light orbs around them. I recognized, oh my gosh, they're about to expand, because I didn't see dying anymore. I was excited for their expansion because I knew where they were going. And I think after a few hours, they said they thought I took that asthma pump that my brother-in-law brought with me, and I didn't take it. And she said, I think you had a really bad anxiety attack. I got medication. I didn't take them. I'm sorry, I didn't take them because I didn't need them. And I went back home. That was the catalyst of change for me, because it felt as if I was wearing lens And as of that day, somebody really cleaned the daylights out of it. And I can't unsee what I saw because it doesn't stop. And I can't unknow it, I know. So my perspective changed that day, 100%. And that became more challenging, being here, knowing the aspect of life that I know, and feeling the energies of people so profoundly, and only being able to express it to them in words, because there it wasn't just words, there I was feeling it too. But when you explain it to somebody who's lived their life for 30 or 40 years, that life is much easier than you've been taught, it packs a punch for them. No, because I went through struggles and I went through pain. So I was taught very early on after this NDE that if I try to now judge people for their choices, I also, kind of create for myself a little structure, a little religion. So my part was they always say, be the love, be the light, but to anchor this lighthouse and allow my awareness to only infiltrate people with compassion. And my family was very fearful, and it caused almost a rip in my family because they thought I was absolutely mad. And I was very afraid, mostly for my mom, because my guide showed me that on her exit, if she is not made aware of just how to feel God, she may not come to the light. And I remembered on the other side what it felt like to see other energies who did not go to the light, how lost they were. So I think the first 6 months after my NDE was extremely excruciatingly challenging for me, not for the outside world, but mostly for my family. And my mother especially, because she was very afraid. She thought I was completely in cahoots with the devil because I was telling her stories about my grandmother, and my grandmother is her mother who passed away. And in our religion in Jamaica, the living has nothing to do with the dead. So my grandmother would tell me things that nobody else knew except the two of them, and she wasn't sure how to take it. Where do you get this information, And I would tell them about things that I get in dreams because my dreams amplified. And they would see it come to pass, and I thought that they would like it, but they became more fearful every time I'd give a dream, and it was something that actually came true. And I remember one day she called me months after, and she said, I have 4 kids, and I want to know that all 4 of them are going to God. And I think you're going to the devil. And that tore me, And while she was on the phone, I felt the energy of Archangel Michael. And I said to Mom, I said, I have a message from one of the angels. And she got mad. She was like, I don't want to hear anything from angels. And I convinced her to just give me a moment. And what Michael gave me, I think, is a gift for the world. Because he gave it to me for my mom, but he also said to tell everyone. So when I close my eyes, which is usually how I shift my awareness from this physical state, I close my eyes, I take a deep breath, and I'm just there with them. When I closed my eyes, I was on this puff of cloud, and I saw this little boy, itty bitty thing, and he was stretching. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, he's going to fall, and I may not get to him in time. And Archangel Michael said, I don't understand how human beings are always trying to find God far and high. And he said, look, Nikita. Calls me Nikita. When I looked, I was earthbound, and I saw this huge white mansion, right? It's so beautiful. And as soon as I was to think, now it felt as if I was back in my NDE again, because as soon as I was to think, I'm there, right? And as soon as I was to think, what's that? I was through the door, and I can see doors and doors and doors going all the way down. I thought to myself, man, those are infinite amount of doors in this building. And I went through the first door on my right, and it's the exact replica of my mom's church in Jamaica, Anglican church, the big organ on the right, the choir on the left. And Michael said to me, within this room, do you feel God? And I was so excited. I said, yes, I feel God. And I went to the second room, and I remember the second room, I could smell the incense, and I could hear the drums beating. I don't know, it's like a native type of religion or practice. And he said, within this room, do you feel God? And I said, yes. And I was exiting that room, and I went to the third room, and it seemed more Indian culture. And I didn't hear the aspect of the word God, but I could feel still the love of God in that room. And he said, within this room, do you feel God? And I said, yes. And I remember the fourth room, it was a dark space, just a table and a chair. And there was a girl with her head slouched over, and she was crying. And I thought for a moment, this doesn't match, this doesn't fit, because I thought I would keep seeing religions, right? And Archangel Michael said, every human being who has a perspective of what God represents for them creates for themselves a room. And I was going to say, no, I didn't feel God, because it was very sad. And then I observed the light orbs, and I recognized, oh my gosh, they're angels comforting her. And I felt it. And I said, I feel God. And immediately I was outside of this mansion, and I was only seeing the mansion. And he said, do you feel God out here? And as I was about to say no, because I know I was, everything started to populate. I could see the trees and the skies and the clouds, and I recognized, oh my gosh, God is also within nature. And I remember the last thing I heard were the birds chirping. And I was like, yes, I can feel God. And I went a little bit off earth, it felt, and then there were so many mansions populated around this one. And I remember I thought to myself, oh my gosh, are there that many religions? Because this one mansion I went in had so many, right? And there were so many other mansions populating in this order, the circular order, just going. And he said, do you feel God out here? And I said, yes. And on the next breath, I was more, it felt as if now I was all the way above the clouds. And I remember now I'm not seeing mansions. This painting behind me, I did it from this visual I had. Now I'm seeing earths populating. And there were so many earths populating. It just kept, and it did it. Oh, it's very cool. It started to populate in this order. And I remember I said, yes, I feel God up here too. And Michael said, God cannot be contained or owned. God is everyone, everything, everywhere. Go and tell them. And I was just, I don't know, encapsulated with the white cloud. And then I was aware of this physical state again. And my mom by now is angry because I don't know how long I left. And for the first time in all my years, I told my mom exactly what I just saw. She was quiet. And she listened. And then she just said, okay, now I know you're going to God. She says, talk to you tomorrow. And she just hung up. I've never felt the fear in her again since that day. She's never been angry at me for talking the way I talk. Before she would tell me, don't use that word, you can't say Jesus and archangel in the same word. Jesus is supposed to be at the head of the table. And it was challenging for me to speak how I speak without feeling as if I'm offending religious people or this people. I never really cared about the outside world, but I cared about my parents, like understanding me. My dad understood. He was okay, because he had his own stories of telling me, when I was this age, this happened to me, and I realized, oh my gosh, you never told us. But he never knew he could. But my mom was very strict Christian, and she never understood until that day. But I repeat this story because I think it's for everyone to understand, whether you are in a religion or not. God is not an aspect for anyone to try to contain or own. And God, the consciousness of God, flows through all of us. which means there's no hierarchy in this realm. None. We all hold the same superpower of whispering or having a thought construct to God and having the same right of receiving miracles or seeing your life and your desires come to form because your intention is your core ability to that connection of your truth. So many things have happened since, but that basically kind of compounds, I guess, what that almost exit point took me to in my life at this age. Yeah. Before this, I was brought up as Christian. I'm a Caribbean kid who always had to prepare for church on a Saturday. We are in church on a Sunday, every Sunday. And before that, when I was younger, I always got in trouble because I'm always asking, why is my best friend who goes to church on a Saturday going to hell? Because, that's how we are taught in the system to think, get your friends to go to this particular denomination because they're not following the script the right way. And my Rastafarian friends, because we're Jamaican, we're a beautiful mix of different religion, different beliefs. And I always got in trouble because I always asked this question, why are there so many gods? But I'm core Christian, especially before this, but I was very afraid of God in a way that I didn't think that my prayers mattered. I didn't think that I was worthy enough for me to pray for myself, for God to hear me. So that's my belief construct. But more than that, I was very attached to all the physicalities of this world. I wanted the identity so much that I drove for it, and I did get it, yes, but there was still a lot of fear in the having of it because I was more fearful of losing the things that I acquired. I think I was probably judgmental also, judging myself, because I was abused at one point in my life and I didn't recognize how much that distracted me from my own light. I didn't recognize how much I didn't give myself grace or love. Although I gave everyone else outside of me grace because I knew what it felt like not to have it. My guides after my NDE taught me how to self-love. And it was a rude awakening for me because I thought I loved myself, right? But they taught me to understand, what are you saying to yourself? What faults do you find with yourself? What do you judge yourself about? What things are you continuing? What patterns are you continuing that shrinks your light? And they taught me, well, that's not self-love. That's choosing to live in the confines of other people with stepping on your boundaries. So you live a life continuing everything you've learned as a child, living in their story and not creating your story. And this was something I learned so old. I was like, where were you, when I was 20? To take me out of these patterns. But I recognize it's the power of our choices we choose. So before I was Christian, and I held on to everything physical that everyone else holds on to. I need to have a house, I need to do this, I need to have this, and I need to remain in hierarchy, and I need to hold this identity. Those were the things that were only important to me then. Now, I recognize that none of them followed me. They never asked me how I lived and the grandeur things that I did. They asked me how I loved. And I missed a lot of that in the drive to try to go for the physical things. I missed how I loved. So there's a difference of the Nekesha before and the Nekesha now. And there's no going back. Because it didn't really feel that good. Not as good as I thought it did. It feels much better to know that I am an expansive being, that God flows through me. And I will continue to be this anchor of light for everyone who's lost in their own darkness. And when they're ready, my light will still shine. They'll find their way home. Yeah. I wasn't afraid as I was angry. I was extremely angry because I was getting dreams that I call them probabilities, and I was seeing them come to pass. And at the time when these just started profoundly, I had maybe about 300 people on my YouTube channel. I was very mad. And I remember one night one of these predictions came through. I think it was something that happened in Hawaii or something. And when I turned the news on, the energy hit me like a ton of bricks. And I remember that night I was very angry with God again, even after the NDE. And I was like, take it away. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want to have these probabilities. I don't want to see them, because what do I do with them? Who's going to listen? And I remember that night because I knew that I can actually will myself to go if it's my time. I can simply sit and say, I'm ready to go. And if it's my time, my body naturally shuts down. I know that. But if it's not your time, you won't. And I remember I spoke to my kids that night and I had that plan. I was like, God, I'm ready to go back. Take me back, right? And this is another lesson I got. And maybe this will help somebody. That night I had a vision, because it was not a dream. It was too real. And my guides, they showed me this woman on a bridge, and I was disappointed because I was like, yeah, just take me back to, where I was in that white space. But instead they showed me a bridge with a woman. And they said, do you recognize her? And I said, no. And they said, no, feel. And when I tapped into my heart, I felt that I recognized how she was feeling. I didn't know her as a person, but I recognized her thoughts. I recognized that she felt depleted. I recognized that, yes, she did have family, but she still felt alone in her family because she felt misunderstood. And they allowed me to see that she was about to make a decision to take an early exit because she believed that this world is better without her. And I felt empathic in the moment, but then I thought to myself, yeah, but I still want to go, And my guide said, it's your choice. If you choose to return now, you can. However, let us show you a probability. And they said, there is a morning that exists in this dimension that you will walk past this beautiful woman, and all you have to give to her is a smile. I thought to myself, just a smile? And they said, it's not just a smile. It's an energetic exchange that she needs that day that will allow her to quiet her mind just for a moment so she can hear her own heart that's always been telling her, it will be okay. You do deserve to be here. And they said, that's all you really need to do, just smile. And that bridge will never see her, because remember, your boots on the ground. And that floored me. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I will never ask to leave again, because it doesn't take effort. I'm sorry, I'm emotional. I'm not emotional in weakness. I get emotional because I recognize how easy it is to change how we see the world. And we are so conformed to the stories of struggle. And we are so energetically attached to judgment that we don't see how easy a smile is. So that floored me. And I've never done that again. I've never asked to leave early or not to be here, because we all have an assignment. And it's waking up every day, like they showed me on the other side. And they say, every day you wake up, you have a choice. How do I choose to expand my light? How do I choose to shrink it from distractions? So if I'm being unkind right now, there's an energetic force that is playing on my emotions, because your emotions are earthbound. There's an energetic force that's playing on my emotions that's amplifying something that really doesn't exist, for me to choose to feed my attention to unkindness, and that shrinks my light. So I've learned that every day that we return here, we have an assignment to do. And sometimes it is as simple as smiling. It's not a big thing. It doesn't require a lot. And even through your pain, even through your illness, the angels say, can you find the grace of God through it? Yeah? Can you smile through it? Because nothing here is permanent. And I learned this, that soul doesn't have colors, but we all choose a different story to express ourselves, right? So we choose to be for me, a chocolate brown skin. And I choose to go through these expressions. And I went through a period of abuse, and that was a soul choice, because I wanted to be a voice to help to heal women, and not just women, but people. So if you ask me now, who am I don't say Nekesha Burrell first. I'm a person who lived a very long time, shrinking my light, believing that that was safety, until I recognized that I was more than that. And now it's my life purpose to shine a light so bright that everyone else who walks this path can understand that their own light matters. And then I can go to, and I carry a name, Nekesha Burrell, and I'm born from Jamaica, because we all have an assignment. But instead we want to say, I'm an entrepreneur and I own a Fortune 500, and how much love has that poured into anyone? That's not your innate essence. The essence is what you bring. What do you bring from when people encounter you without words? What do they feel? Because words aren't our first language. It's this energy that pulsates from us. When somebody sees you, do they smile without them hearing you say hello? It means that you have an inviting auric field. Do they shrink their own light because you're carrying anger that's not yours to begin with? So it is simpler. And if we want to stop the war happening across this world, we stop the war that we're fighting in our own minds. That's where it begins. And I don't care how hard people say it is. The mind tells you it's hard because it has not been taught to understand it's so simple. So we must begin to speak our truth. And we must begin to stand up in our choices. When I interact or when I feed my attention anywhere, Mother Mary taught me this a long time ago. I'll never forget. She said, humanity has conformed to the greatest distraction in the world, where it convinces them that they're all separate stories. But you are all simply the same chapters in one book. So why is it that you take care and you nurture and you protect the physical money, physical currency, more than you do your energy currency? Why is it that you spend thousands of dollars of your energy currency into a conversation that's not feeding you, it's depleting you, into an interaction that doesn't serve you, into continuing patterns that breaks you over and over every day? She says, well, that's spending thousands and millions of your energy currency, but yet you protect money. She says, protect your currency. It's the most valuable resource you have. So every time I have a conversation or choose to have a conversation, I feel into your energy. And then I account, how much of my energy currency is it a good investment? So when you reached out, I went on your channel and I sat and I felt the currency that you were giving to this world. And I found that to be a good investment. And those are the only spaces I sit in, because it's my currency and I choose the value of it. So do you. And this is how we begin this change that we so urgently think is impossible. But the angels are waiting us for make this choice. They're waiting for us to call the changes in. As these structures begin to fall away, and they are, stop conforming to the things that no longer serve you. Start to now think, what world do I now want to see experience for my child, education, for the things I eat, industrial farming, for the way the world is run, the politics. And now we are the architects of this. Allow these structures to fall. Stop feeding your attention into them. Because what you do is you exchange your light, and then you take on energy of darkness within you that feeds you more doubt and anger and fear. Why would you do that? So let's be conscious of where we feed our light and stop exchanging it for things that don't serve us anymore. And begin to think and choreograph and curate. My gosh, what would it feel like to be in a world that is so peaceful? And feel it. Because energetically it begins to ripple. What does it feel like to have a child that's accepted and not separated because they're on the spectrum? What does it feel like to barter? To not have to eat something and worry what it does to my body? Yeah? What does it feel like to really truly love my neighbor and only see another human being that carries the light of God too? We are the architects of this. So will we continue to give away our power? Because the power is in your choice. And nobody can take that from you unless you give it. So let's begin to value ourselves as the most infinite, valued resource on this planet. And we will see a change that we can only dream of. But that's where it must start. My reality now is the expansive state. My dream is this world that I spend this amount of hours in. And I say this because I want every human being to understand, I know we've been confined with what we call struggles and pain and anger. But it's still up to us choosing if we want to keep expressing ourselves this way. A soul decides a journey they want to have. And some souls do choose to express themselves in a way that are less than what we call normal. And that soul, for me, is an advanced being because they knew it would be challenging. But they wanted to be expressing themselves as ill, as being here for a temporary basis, allowing us to see God in a different way. Because every person comes with a God light. I allow you to love me even though I may not seem normal the way society says. So will you choose to love me either way? Will you choose to love me through the pain? Will you choose to love me although they identify me as a spectrum or with some kind of deformity? Will you love me because I express myself different from the way say I am? Whether it's whatever you choose to do. And I want you to choose from this moment to just see the aspect of God flowing through everybody that you meet, no matter what. And this is where you begin to see your own light to yourself, to understand that every day we return from our sleep, it's returning to make one of two choices. Do I express the love of God today to myself first? Or do I shrink it by all the distractions that are already here? So no matter what you're going through in this world, I ask you to breathe with intention. Pause before you react. You don't need to be reactive. Find stillness within your own being, because nothing that comes to you that needs to be decided in urgency is coming from your heart. It's coming from the constructs of this world that says everything now. But your heart asks you, how does it feel to interact, to speak this, to be a part of this? And if you allow yourself to breathe, it gives you one sacred moment to do an assessment and now choose this thing that causes me to be so reactive, to be triggered. What age am I right now? Because most of us are acting out from a 6-year-old version of themselves who was hurt and who hasn't found time to heal. So this pause allows you to intentionally witness yourself. Who am I right now as I act out on this? And does this need to continue to be a pattern in my life? Do I continue to hold on to this hate or this trauma or this pain? Because most of us are carrying those wounds and those inner child that we have that we think is impossible to cure created beautiful systems in our nervous system to protect us because they needed to be protected as a child. But as you become an adult, make your choice. My choice is to choose the things that serve me today. So I ask you, where are you feeding your energy right now? How does it feel within? And carry that with you every day. Because no matter what you see happening around you, it's very temporary. And when it comes to your point of taking an exit, it really is a celebration. And you will not be asked about the grandeur things. You won't be asked what color you were. The things we fight about here doesn't follow you there because it doesn't exist. It's not needed. The one question I know you will be asked is, how did you love? So when your exit does come about for you to leave this physical state, please understand there's nothing to fear. Please don't look for one aspect or another. Please just feel from your heart. Don't look for one angel or another. It may be the one family member you haven't spoken to in years who comes to meet you. But just feel your light. And please remember, you take nothing here with you. No emotions are there. No ego is there. Only light. Only love. And you will be faced with how you loved or how you chose not to love. And that will be something that you alone will walk through. But there's always support. And that is the aspect of this life. Well, I have a YouTube channel now that I give messages of hope. I give core teachings, very basic, spoon-fed teachings of how to anchor into your light. It's Nekesha Burrell. And my website is souldeepconsciousness.love, which shows you everything that I do now. Because I found this helped a lot of people to understand. If there's anyone out there, religious or not, this book was written, well, it was co-written between me and my angelic team. From the story that they gave me to give my mom with the mansions with many rooms. And although it says on my way to meet God, it's a construct of how you meet God every day, without religion, without any rooms and windows. But it's a reflective book that will help you to see that you have already met God. And you are meeting God every day. It allows you to reflect on your life to really, really understand how simple it is to walk in that grace. So I ask you to get a copy or gift a friend a copy. I kid you not, it will help you in the most simplistic way to see how grace finds you every day. Thank you.